Hello, welcome to Annunciation of the Lord. Father Rob Arsenault and
Deacon Mark Gauthier, thanks for joining us. This is great. This is the Pastor's Chat.
Pastor's Chat.
Sunday, the 24th Sunday of Ordinary
24th Sunday
Time.
of Ordinary Time.
There's nothing ordinary about Ordinary Time. Just want you to know that. I mean, we're following the regular process and we're doing things. But whenever God's involved, there's nothing ordinary about Ordinary Time. That's
Extraordinary and
for sure,
ordinary.
right?
I totally agree.
Absolutely.
Totally agree.
Open us up in prayer, please,
I'd
Father
love to,
Rob.
yeah. Name the Father and the Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Lord, we
Amen.
ask your blessing upon all the people who might be tuning in, both now live, because we're going to be here live for the next half hour or so, and those who might watch us later. Like, who are just kind of checking in from, we're just talking about this, like we don't know who you are. We're not always sure where you're watching
That's
or what
right.
connection.
Right.
Could be someone from your family, someone from my family. Who knows? Who knows?
Very good to have you listening and watching. And if you want to, please participate. Get into that chat.
It does help us. It really does. Because otherwise you and me chatting here, which is lovely.
This is great.
Nice way to spend that.
We have things we can say to each other. And then afterwards we say, well, that was nice. And then we move on.
Yeah, and move on.
But we want to make sure that we are discussing things that are pertinent to you, things that are important for you to hear, and also that are part of what it means to be parish, to be community, right? To be alive, that kind of thing.
And that was the big thing. That was almost the theme, like because it is the the Sunday of Ordinary Time,
right,
but
that's right.
it really is now. We're into fall,
Yes.
So there's no question. The summer's over. We're into September now. Kids are back in school. This is the normal time when things start to ramp up again, and we'll start to do that. We will start to do that, but. We just want to make sure that we make that transition as well as we can.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that I find very interesting, and you sort of alluded to it in your homily, at the beginning of your homily, Father Rob, that suddenly it's September and boom, autumn has arrived. And it sort of tumbles into the room, and sort of summer is over.
Yeah, I love fall. I mean, for me, it's
beautiful. It's beautiful.
It's the weather is stunning. The leaves are still on the trees. It's almost my favorite month, really, in some ways. If I didn't have to go to school, it would be September.
Yeah, for sure.
But here we are. What are we going to do? And again, I had a plan. I had a very good plan. I thought the plan was, we'll just get through to October. And then things would be normal, and then we'd have a normal Advent, and we'd have a normal Christmas, and life would return as it had been.
We're on the edge, though, right? This is sort of an interesting thing. It's almost like a normal. Everybody's going back to school, and now all the experts are watching. What's going to happen?
See. Well, we said that last year too. 5 million young people go back to school in Ontario. Yeah. That's going to have an effect. But we believe that we'll get through this, right? That's the kind of thing. But that's what I was trying to get to was, okay, all right, companions have been here, they've left, it's past, kids back in school, the routine begins again.
Yes.
But what's the routine? What's the new normal? What is the thing that we're going to do going into the fall to set us up for the new year? And this is the idea of getting Alpha going. Alpha is really the primary focus right now to get the parish to at least as many people as possible to think about it and hopefully to be a part of it.
And what a great gospel, and you led beautifully with your homily into why we even have the Alpha program. And it's so
who do you say I am?
Yes.
Who do you say I am? Well, if we believe that Jesus is the Son of God, first person, second person of the Trinity, then we want to spend time with him.
Yeah.
Now, if we don't believe that, then you take an Alpha course because this is about Christianity. Maybe you don't really.
Well, and I think that may be basically that may be the bottom line of what Alpha is all about. Jesus asks, "Well, who do the people say that I am?" And there's the discussion. There's what goes on right with Alpha is who is this Jesus? And you can give whatever answer you want in discussion because you want to get that out here. You want to be able to get out in front of you and talk about what you've understood Jesus to be. But then he asks the question.
Yeah, who do you say I am? Now, there's also a line at the back that the last almost line, and I didn't talk about it at all because there's only so much. You have 10, 15 minutes. But for those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel.
Yes.
This idea that you have a relationship with Christ and a responsibility to share that with others. And I don't know how many of us could really say that we're doing that. Okay, yes, I'm going to get closer to God, and that's good for me. And if I choose that, that's fine. If I choose that not, that's okay. Well, no, actually, this is eternal, and it matters that we would come into relationship with Christ. But then that we would share that with others. It's the proclamation of the gospel is not just us, you as a deacon reading it formally at church. It's this whole living out that we should be different. It should be a difference in the world.
Yeah, and it speaks of the vocation. What are you called to do? And I think there's where the words of Jesus in today's gospel. You're called to live out the good news. You're called to be connected with me, Jesus says, and to live out the good news. I'm reminded of this expression that Bishop Barron often uses is, remember, it's not about you.
It's not about you.
It's about you bringing the good news to others.
And there's a word, I didn't use it in my homily because I'm scared of it because I always get it wrong. There's apostasy, which just means you give up on the faith. And sometimes I get my words mixed up, and so I'd say that. But apostolate. Have you ever heard that word, apostolate?
The apostolate, yeah.
Yeah, so an apostolate is sometimes it's time of service. So in religious orders, they go through a year or two of apostolate. Yeah. But it's also an apostolate is that you would have a particular charism that God is working with you that you need to do to proclaim the kingdom.
Yes.
Now, maybe you got a gift for hospitality and then you're doing some kind of service. Maybe it's a gift of teaching, then you're teaching. Maybe it's a gift of administration, and then you could help organize things. Even like, it's something you don't talk about it very much, but people have a gift for wealth. They actually make money. They're not only, I don't mean that in the sense of just getting rich, but they have just this real gift for managing money and using resources and bringing it on forth.
Yes.
And then that's then shared. It's not necessarily that means you get a nicer car or you get a bigger cottage. It means you can then share that and use that resource for other people's good. Like, it would be a great
So
thing.
it's to discover what has God done with you? What is he doing with you that you are a gift to others?
Yeah, well, the mistake I think so often is we just assume that church is gospel.
Yes.
So sitting quietly, passively in a building, receiving a sacrament, and then quietly leaving is what God wants for you. Now, that's part of it because we go there to be fed, literally, with the Eucharist, to be built up, to be inspired, so that the other 6 3/4 days when you have nothing to do with church, most of us on Sunday, I go every day, but you're doing something with that.
Right.
And that's what, right. Who do you say I am is what you do the other 6 3/4 days.
Yeah, that's so important observation, because I think what happens is that too often we don't realize that I need to, well, what is that? Jesus, as the Father has sent me, so I send you. And I think that,
get out there, make
those
it
words
happen.
are so important.
Yeah,
It's like,
and that's that cycle I talked about. Like, okay, so someone's hearing this for the first time. They have no concept of church or parish, or, it's a little strange to be listening to my podcast, but anyway, who knows? Okay. Coming in, taking an alpha. Okay, that would be a very basic thing. And it just kind of connects you with the church. It connects you with some ideas, some basic Christianity.
Yes.
The second level of that might be connecting with Patricia Stewart, who does the adult formation in our parish. And then maybe taking a wild goose, okay, or what we're really hoping towards in the springtime is the Siena Institute, which gets back to charism.
excellent. Yes.
What are your charisms, and how do we
Yep.
get you doing that?
Yep.
The writers, we want you writing. The administrators, we want you administrating. The hospitality people should be in hospitality. Sometimes we think that if it's a church thing, it must be what I don't want to do and I'm not very good at. But what if it's your gift? It's what you're meant to do. Yeah. Like musicians, like Emily playing today, she is made to sing.
Yeah, beautiful
We're
voice.
really lucky to have that. We have a
Beautiful
number of musicians,
Yes.
and when I hear like someone like Connie, who's just her whole life has been music. So she just exudes this stuff, right? I can't sing. I can carry a note in a bucket, and I could spend a lot of time. This is called a multiplier. I could spend years working on my music, and I would probably get a little bit better. But it's not my gift. It's not
Good
my
for you.
gift.
It's so important to be able to recognize that.
No. So why don't we get somebody else who's really gifted at
Yeah.
that, and if they work on it, just a little bit of extra work, and they get exponentially
Yeah.
better.
So what do you desire? Or what's that other expression? What's the fire that burns within you? And there's that for each and every one of us.
Right.
And it's to be able to discover that. And I think that's, again, the advantage of things like Alpha. And
Right.
of course, there are other seminars that can be taken to help us discover my giftedness. And I think even more than saying my giftedness, I think it's,
Charism.
who am I for you?
Right.
And to be able to be that for each
Because
other.
when you get a parish operating in its charism,
Yes.
we talked about that before. Like we have, what are the things that energize our parish? Well, I think the charismatic buzz, the youth programming, and outreach. We identified those. That was within the before time. But as more and more of our parishioners discover what their charisms would be, and then get God operating them, Like I think of someone who's a teacher or an administrator, like people who love to organize. I can't organize breakfast, right? My thing's more to inspire maybe, or to speak, or to preach, but I need administrators. I need people who are detail people that can help me to stay on track. Now I'll cast a vision. That's
Sure.
I can do that all day long. And people who go to meetings with me, I drive them crazy because I'm always dreaming the dream and what about this, what about that. And then when that kind of crashes down sometimes too, you need people to help you to kind of keep, don't move on to the next dream before we finish the last one.
But if I might add to what you're saying, and I think it's beautiful the way you describe that, Father Rob, is that once someone gets a hold of your vision of what you're verbalizing, what you're trying to say, because you try to put it on whiteboards and you're doing that, and then some people grab it and they start moving. And you're able to bring it into the next stage. I've noticed you do that, and I think it's wonderful that once you've got those administrators that are starting to develop stuff, is this what you meant? And now you start seeing.
You start to develop, and what you need, and it's where John and I are very different. John is more. There's something called the 6 geniuses, and so you need dreamers, you need kind of discerners, then you need applicators, and then you kind of need the tail end Charlie, which is really, really important. And he's the guy that comes along at the end and says, look, you got to get this done. Like, you guys are dreaming all these dreams. Like who's paying the bills?
Yes,
like,
of course.
No. Before you get into something else, you got to finish what you said you would do. And that's very, very important. You need all those aspects. Yeah. Not all of them are always as respected. Like, everybody likes the visionaries, but it's not so much the, all the guys that bring it along. I want to respond to a question. Jeff asked a question about, because I thought of it today earlier too. Remember, there's so many parts of that gospel we could preach on. Spread the gospel in these days, and Jesus said to them, "Tell no one." It was the Gospel of Mark, and Mark is almost like a murder mystery dinner. Yep. Like, you don't know who's in, you don't know who's out.
Sure.
And,
right.
And it's a very early gospel. The church is still under persecution. It's probably Peter who's in Rome dictating to a scribe. I don't think Peter could write, and so everything's like, okay, we got to talk about this, but you needed to know. Okay, the main thing, Jesus died and rose again. Here's a few other details about him. It's got that feel to it. So yes, Jesus is sort of saying, while I'm still alive, don't tell anyone about this. Here's our little secret, because you need to know this, because it could cost you your life at some point. Now, once he dies and rises again, then go forth and proclaim the good news to all nations.
So one of the things you're saying is that Jesus was particularly concerned about the outcome of the lives of those who might reveal before it's time?
Well, it's almost like the gospel's written post-resurrection. Right. So that's the thing, is you're always looking back through the cross.
Right.
So whenever you read something in sacred scripture, especially in the New Testament, in the Gospels, remember, we already know how it ends.
Yeah.
Right? We know where this goes.
Yeah, it's so different for us.
Yeah, I know. So see, we're post-resurrection.
Good point.
And then you look back, and so all the healings, all the wisdom teachings, all the symbolism in his actions all point to the cross and the resurrection. Now, in the linear time of that, if we put ourselves right back and say, well, the disciples are listening to Jesus, and he's basically telling them, don't tell anybody. Right? And we say, oh, he doesn't want us to tell anybody. No. That was that phase which leads to
before
passion, death, and resurrection. Yeah. Post-resurrection, Jesus meets with his disciples, go forth and proclaim to all nations, baptizing in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So it's very clear that the mandate is to proclaim to the nations. It's just what phase you're at in that story. It's a little bit like, I don't know what the reference would be, like the Western. And the bad guy comes into town and causes trouble, and probably the good guy's going to win.
Okay.
Right, and we don't know quite how he's going to win.
Sure.
And there may be a cliffhanger moment where it looks like he's not going to win, but we all kind of know, because basically, unless it's a Swedish film or some kind of European twisted thing where you don't really win.
Sure.
There's no winners. Or, most Western literally, but most from the West, like European, but mostly North American movies, there's a scene, there's a problem, there's a hero, kind of an anti-hero. He kind of corrects the problems, runs into a hassle, almost fails, but in the end, he always triumphs. We just don't know how he's going to triumph. That's really the entertainment of the movie, but we all know he's going to win.
Sure, sure.
The only problem is the sidekick. He always gets killed.
Yeah, that's
And that ramps up the thing, right?
which
So-
reminds me of that Star Trek thing. Always
Yeah,
be
yeah,
careful.
yeah.
I
Red
forget what was
shirts.
it called? The red shirts.
Red shirts, security
if
guys.
they say put this on before you go down,
Don't wear
yes.
the red shirt.
Yeah.
Well, Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and crewman Yelinsky. Well, who's going to get eaten by the monster, right?
That's
It's
right.
crewman
Yeah,
Yelinsky.
that's right.
You know,
Exactly.
chance. And that was just to ramp up the dude. And this is a whole, I preached on this one time about Russian novels. There are no secondary characters in the Gospels. They're all important.
good
Your
point.
life matters, right?
Good
Your
point.
charism matters. Your role matters. Now, we're not all going to be popes. We're not all going to be, world-renowned saints. Fair enough. Not everybody's a Mother Teresa, but everybody can contribute to the gospel.
And it's really good because now bring that back to today's gospel with what we know. And I really appreciate your observation. With what we know, then how do I make this personal?
Right.
Jesus is looking at you right now,
Yeah.
and he's saying, "Who do you say that I
you
am?"
say that I am?
And what are you going to do about it? It's not just okay. Well, I say that you're so and so, and you move on, do with your life.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's 1,000 titles. Like you could give them Lord of Lords, King of
Yeah,
Kings,
yeah.
Lion of Judah. Great. You've memorized a lot of titles. And then I go out in the parking lot and cut somebody off in traffic. It's
right
like,
on, right on.
okay, wait a minute. Who do you say I am with your actions,
Yeah.
your life,
Yeah.
and how you're living?
Because by far the most difficult thing to do and think that you can do it on your own is when Jesus said, "Love one another as I have loved you." Well,
Yeah.
that's an impossibility
Right.
without the assistance of the Lord.
And that's basically what the Alpha. I want to bring back to Alpha because that's really our theme here. Is this again the symbolism, the central symbol of Alpha is a question mark. It's kind of interesting. It's like, okay, what's the question of
Yeah,
life?
that's a good point.
And
Good
what
point.
they try to get to are people, and they always do. They're called streeties. The beginning of Alpha, the videos are almost always just random people on the street, and they're asking them questions. And it's interesting. They ask them a whole bunch of questions, and then they splice them into each of the 14 or so videos that you watch. And so over the course of the 14 weeks, you kind of get to know them. There's the young woman on the beach. And
Sure,
there's the
right,
Asian
yes.
guy that was at some kind of a trade center. And there was I think it was an African who looked like he was in the city, but he had a kind of a funny, because you get to know them a little bit because of their answers.
Sure.
And not all of them believe. Like, it's like, do you believe that Jesus was God? No, I don't think so. We've gotten over that. And it's like, what? Like, what's that doing there? Well, that's most people where they're starting. A lot of people are starting from that position that Jesus is a nice guy, he's a teacher, but, we've overdone that.
And it has to be understandable. And this is one of the things that where you can be relaxed about coming to and entering into and listening to and responding to the whole Alpha journey because. There's all kinds of understandings of who Jesus is, and like this is something that happened 2,000 years ago, and how does it supposed to affect me? And it's good to get this going on inside your head.
Right, get
Making
on the
you think
table. 'Cause
about
if
it.
that's your
Yeah,
operative theology,
yeah,
let's
yeah.
find out. But now, there are legitimate teachings about Christ. There is the church's, doctrine. We'll get to that. But again, something that Bishop Fulton Sheen said one time, people don't struggle with what the church teaches so much. They struggle with what they think the church teaches.
Excellent point. Yes.
So a lot of people have this kind of baggage from back in, when they were kids or depending, the Irish or the Italians or the French. Everybody had their own little swings on these things. And sometimes we just grow up with this stuff and we believe it to be true, but we haven't really worked it through yet.
You made a good point about that in your homily, talking about limbo.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting thing because, and I remember I read this somewhere. Limbo meant in the margin.
Yeah.
So like it wasn't something that was official or formal or even a teaching of the church, but like it was a side note.
It was never a doctrine. What
right.
it really came down to was, could a non-baptized baby go into
Yes,
heaven?
that's right.
Now, God is so much bigger than our paperwork. So I'm
Yeah.
playing golf one weekend and I miss a baptism, and then God forbid there be a death. God is bigger than that. So that's what we did. Now, again, it was out there, but the notion of it's actually kind of strange. You would live, you would kind of have ice cream and maybe a walk in the park and maybe go fishing or something, but it was like you never could enter fully into the kingdom.
Yeah.
Forever. Like that's it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, what a crazy idea. Like that God would do that.
Well,
to
and
an innocent child.
it's interesting because I remember another part of that thinking was this child would die, and like, Where do we put that person? Well, it's not up to us.
Yeah, God figures all that stuff. Well, I mean, it's a funny example from my own life. I was teasing a little shout out here to Father Alan McDonald, but he was a classmate of mine. And I was ordained on the 7th of May. And he was ordained on the 14th of May, same year. So he's 7 days my junior.
Okay.
And I used to tease him. I said, what would have happened if the world had ended after my ordination, but before your ordination? He said, you would have had to been a transitional deacon for all eternity cleaning up my altar. Right?
That's
It's always like,
okay.
because it's linear time. You can't change it, right?
Right
It's
on,
not his
that's right.
fault. Who
Yes.
cares? It's so silly.
right.
Or even that I'm the senior priest.
Yeah.
See, between the two of us,
Yeah.
I am the senior man by 7
Sure,
days.
sure.
And that doesn't change. Melchizedek
Yeah,
of old. Now,
right.
what difference does it make? It's just foolishness. But it's a way of getting inside his head a little bit.
You're
just
right
playing
on,
with them.
right
But-
on.
But it's that kind of crazy thinking that kind of led to the notion of limbo.
And there's the amount of things in the church like that. Eh?
There's
That-
some of
yeah,
it, and that's a bit of
yeah,
what the
yeah.
Vatican II was trying to do. Now, again, that's a whole other can of worms, but Vatican II is the highest form of governance, when the bishops
Sure.
come together, legitimate council of the church. But some of its implications, what it was trying to do was clean up a bit of that.
Yes,
We hadn't really
sure.
done anything since Trent. And so trying to say, okay, what is the core of what we believe? I used to do this with Christmas. I'd say, well, in my family, we would go to midnight mass, we'd come home, have a meal, and then my father would go under the tree and find gifts and give it to his children.
Okay,
That's
right,
how we did it.
Right. Yeah.
Now,
yeah.
some of that is absolutely core. Jesus Christ was born into the world. Some of it is because I'm Catholic. That's why we had midnight mass.
Yes,
Partly because I'm
right.
French Canadian. Some of it is just my family tradition. It's my dad who did the tree and not my mom or my oldest brother or what. I mean, it could have been somebody else. So you got to know which, not all of
Sure,
that is
sure.
important. Like Jesus
Yeah,
not
that's
being
right.
born, that changes everything. Someone else in my family giving out gifts doesn't.
Yeah.
And
right,
you got to know what
right.
level you're on. Not everything carries the exact same
Excellent.
weight.
Yeah.
So with the vestments, sometimes there was this little cloth that would always go in your thing. Well, basically it was Kleenex. It was like a hanky. Well, I'll use Kleenex. But people didn't have that, and it was good to have something like
Sure.
that. But there's no need to wear that anymore.
Right on. Right on.
There's
Good
nothing
point. Good
particularly
point.
pious about it. It was basically a hanky that went, like even the palette that we use, the pall, big old cathedral, birds flying around. It's good to put something over the chalice.
Right on.
It had a practical use, but it was not necessarily at the last the Last Supper. Jesus is using a pall. I don't think that was probably
Yeah,
the case.
and if we don't do it, then it's not valid.
It's fine,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, but I think that's a really good point. That again, as you did before, to come back to Alpha, it's
Right.
the idea of I'm Catholic, and okay, so what does that mean? And if you sort of have that big Alpha question mark
Yeah.
all over your face, then I think that means okay, then find out a little bit more.
Well, I don't want to spoil it for anybody who's never taken Alpha, but there's a really interesting argument that C.S. Lewis made, that Jesus is either the Son of God as he claimed to be, or a madman. But you can't really have it both ways.
That's right. Yeah,
that he's
that's
sort of a great teacher and a leader, and a reformer. He didn't say that. He basically laid it out pretty clear. I am
That's right.
second person of the Trinity, son of the Father, Jesus Christ, this Messiah, the anointed one.
Sure.
So you have to either kind of accept or reject it, but to do that with an informed conscience,
Yeah.
to do it with an informed experience of what the Scriptures tell us and what the Church teaches.
And I'm reminded, it was Father Peter Coughlin. You might remember Father Peter. Father Peter Coughlin sort of put me on the right track one day about something like that. And he just asked me off the cuff, he said, so what's Christianity? And I
Yeah.
said, oh, it's a relationship with Jesus. He said, no. And I said, what? He said, it's a right relationship with
Right
Jesus.
relationship with Jesus,
And I
yeah.
think that's the thing about saying, well, I'm Catholic, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, so what else do I need? Well, it means that you need to find out what does that mean? What does it mean to be who you are?
And to live it, and to be
Yeah.
intentional
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
I think some of the movements have this down, intentional discipleship.
Yep, I like
Where-
that
where
phrase. That's
we
very
kind of
important.
start every day with this sort of almost like El Cid and I have been talking a bit about this in some of our walks, but I used to call it practical atheism. No, God, I'm done with that. Practical mysticism.
Mysticism.
Practical
Okay,
mysticism.
practical
That's why I mix up words sometimes. So every day, there's a grace and a blessing, I think, that's bestowed into my life. And I spend the day almost like finding the little surprise. Like, what's that one conversation? What's that one
Wow, very good.
little ministry or a little
Yeah.
moment, God moment that may happen? And you have to be looking for it intentionally. If I don't have my head on, if I'm not really thinking, it's very easy to step over it. But if you're really praying into that, it's just in the expectant faith. Again, this is what Father Bob would talk about. You can find those things in the day. Now, they're not always, fireworks going off or some dramatic moment. It might be a very simple little thing, but often there's some very good things that can happen if you're looking for them.
Because the Lord is always looking to commune with us.
Never stops.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, excellent
But he doesn't, for whatever reason, and you got to ask him about this. When we get to heaven, maybe we find out these things. It's often very subtle.
Sure.
He doesn't want, that's why I said evil is very much about in your face, loud and noisy and flashy and all that stuff, where the Lord always seems to take the quiet, the humble, the simple, but the powerful.
What's that verse in one of the Psalms, Psalm 46, I think it is, be still.
Be still.
And know that I am God.
And know that I am God.
So that's the importance of calm down. And, well, it's interesting. One of the analogies that crossed my mind a few minutes ago was the idea of, if you're Canadian and you have the opportunity, find out about your country.
Right.
Find out about who you are. Find out about, if you can, get to Newfoundland and visit. If you can, get to BC and visit. Or
even okay, I'm looking out the window here a little bit. We have these silver maples that line the boulevard in front of the church. They're beautiful. They're starting just a little bit of color in them. We have a big maple on the corner that already has, I think there was a time it got kind of cold midsummer.
Yes.
It turned a little color. Now we're about to see the most glorious, beautiful thing.
Oh, yes.
The turning of the leaves, and it's cooler at night now. It's a little easier to sleep. It's a wonderful time of year. I know the kids are back in school, and it's kind of like a little but the natural beauty of the fall is stunning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now what's happening? The earth is tilting on its axis, like the entire world is shifting, and the angle of the sun is changing, and we're even now, you notice in the evening it's dark around 8 o'clock.
That's
even
right.
7:30 it's starting to get a little bit darker, and so it's happening. Like, it's happening right now. Now you could spend the next month just kind of grinding it and saying, I don't like that one, and I don't. I prefer the summer over the winter, but I'm not going to waste the next 2 months, which are the most beautiful, I think, of the year. I love the spring and I love the fall.
Sure.
Because I don't like the snow. And actually, I do like the snow. I think it's all part of it. That I go down to that river every day, and I think, in a few months it's going to be frozen, and I'll be snow skiing, or I'll be cross-country skiing. Right now I could go swimming. What a glorious country we live in.
The variety, the assortment of what God is doing in right around you, and I think that's beautiful.
There's beavers swimming in there, and I was talking to somebody who was recently in Halifax, and there are whales I've seen in the harbor. There are porpoises there. There are seals that were there. Almost every time I went out, I saw seals. Wow. So it's all this beauty, right? So appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Experience it.
There's so much to enjoy. There's so much to appreciate. And I think if we sort of let ourselves get too lethargic, let it go by, we miss it.
And then it's interesting stuff and then that's true of natural beauty, but also of faith. So the word's getting out of my dock where I keep my boat that I'm a priest, right? So I now have people coming up to me and asking me questions and sort of, so what church are you part of? And because at first they got to know me as a sailor. So I got a bit of a reputation as I sail alone quite a bit, and I fly spinnaker, and so they know, okay, you're a pretty good sailor kind of thing. And then it's like, but you're a priest, but I like you.
How can you be both?
You're pretty funny, but Now, is that hardcore evangelization? Maybe not. I don't know. But to try to be present to people and see where they're at and make the gospel known. It's not super complicated.
And again, and that's beautiful. That's a beautiful example that you use, because that's again what that alpha needs to be.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like that. Yeah, there's a funny story with that. I tried to finish with one of my stupid stories, but I'm thinking about Halifax. This is where I was part of this marina. And I was part of a racing crew, and it was a very windy night, and it was rainy, and we went down to race on somebody else's boat, but then someone's yelling, he's not coming. So, okay, we're not going. I'm doing the sad sailor walk, and some guy just said to me, just randomly, look, we're a short crew tonight. Come with us. Great. Jumped on the boat. The other guy I was with said, no, I'm tired. I'm out. So, and the way it's a bit like golf, like Hank, Bob, Bill, Tom, like you just do first names. Boat pulls out, get the sails up, we go sailing. It's great. Didn't fall off. wasn't a jerk, didn't try to tell the guy to race his boat. I want to come back next week. Okay, fine. All right, 4 weeks go by, and I'm part of the crew now. Right? It's great. I like sailing. I'm on this guy's boat. He's a bit more consistent, but I don't say what I do necessarily right away, right? And so, nice guy. Apparently, people noticed whether the wedding ring on or not.
Sure.
Said, don't really, not a bit of a jerk, but seemed pretty good guy. Like, what does this guy do? Like, it's so. So after about 4 or 5 weeks, my skipper just turned to me afterwards. We're having like a coffee, we're having a beer and a piece of pizza. So what do you do? He just got fed up with it, right? What do you do? So, well, I don't know, it's probably your first guess, but I'm a Catholic priest. Really? Apparently nobody had picked that one in the pool. Like, nobody had thought that was what it...
Sure.
So, and then they said, well, what church are you? And then I said, well, at the time it was Lower Sackville and John Vianney. And one of the other guys in the crew, his wife wasn't with us because she just had a new baby, but her parents were parishioners of mine. And she had come from that parish, and the parents have been saying, look, we got these new priests, and why don't you come back? And they're kind of funny, and the tall, goofy one, I think he's a sailor. And it was really funny. And so this whole thing got around.
Excellent. Beautiful.
And after about a year or so, they started referring to me as Father Rob. Like, he started using my title, and they wanted me to bless the fleet. And it was really, now this is a very secular, like, half of them were fallen away Catholics or whatever, or at least former Catholics. But they put me on management. Like, it was a way of getting into a part of the world that I normally never would be able to. Now, I didn't go down there necessarily. That's my day off. That's my thing. But I never stopped being a Catholic. I never stopped being a priest. I just didn't always wear my collar when I'm racing sailboats. So I still even went with the same crew. Like, one Sunday afternoon, they were doing a weekend race, but normally I can't do those because I'm working. But we had worked out the timing so that I literally jumped in a boat. They go flying across the basin. I jump on the other boat wearing my collar, go down below, get changed, come on deck, and just go right into the crew. Like, it all happened like a scene out of a Mission Impossible. But the whole fleet could see this. Like, what the hell? Oh, yeah, Sunday afternoon. He's working. Okay, good. Come on. So it was just a lot of fun. So there are many ways to make Christ present.
Yeah.
Yes, the Eucharist is supreme, in liturgically and part of our Catholic faith. But we never stop being that, even on the golf course, even in school, even having a beer with a friend in a pub. Like that's I'll finish on this. Was Chesterton said that the part of his conversion was that there was no contradiction in the Catholic faith between a pipe, the cross, and a pint. That you could be tugging on a pipe, drinking a beer, talking about your faith, and there's no contradiction. This is all part of life, right? This is now obviously all things in moderation, but yeah, it's beautiful stuff.
And being the reality of who you are.
Being who you are.
Yeah.
And he was very eccentric, but he was great. He's up for being
eccentric. He's
interesting cat.
Fascinating wisdom.
Yeah,
that came from him.
Different
Absolutely.
Guy
and I think that's one of the beauties of being able to say, Lord, who am I? Because I love that song. Casting Crowns has that song. Who am I? Yeah. And of course, the answer is, I am yours. So allow yourself to be who the Lord is creating you to be, and be that in full integrity wherever you are.
Right.
And I think that's the beauty and I appreciate your sharing, Father Rob. Yeah, because that's the beautiful analogy of recognizing that wherever we go, the Lord comes with us, and He wants you to be who you are.
That's what He created to be.
And I think that's the beauty of it. So think about Alpha. That's really worthwhile. And we thank you for being a part of of what we're doing today here in the Pastor's Chat. We've had Mass this morning indoors instead of the outdoor Mass. The 10 o'clock Mass was indoors, and that'll continue.
And we had drive-by communion. That will continue.
That's
as
right.
long as there's the edict about not going to church.
Yes.
We will continue to give communion outside from 11 to 11:30. That will continue.
That's right.
We're going to keep streaming. We're going to keep doing stuff like this. We'll always stream the Mass because that's why we set the system up the way we did, because we knew, like, for funerals and weddings and Mass will always be streamed on some form. I think I can't see that ever changing.
So the 5 o'clock Mass and the 10 o'clock Mass will continue to be streamed online. Okay.
We still have adoration.
Yeah, adoration on Tuesday afternoon from 12:30 to 3:30. We need to know your name and to be able to, and we'll be seating you. The capacity is a bit larger because we're going to every other pew now. So we're able to have a few more people in the church for that. But we need to know who's coming because we need to keep doing that kind of protocol.
we still have confessions on Thursday from 3 to 4 and from 7 to 9 and 7 to 8. But we'll also do that, individually if we need to, right?
Excellent.
Now we start to do Alpha. And Alpha, I believe Allison's going to be on next week.
Allison will be here next week, and we're going
That's
to
the
talk
plan.
about Alpha. And we're going to
Alpha.
talk about
And
Allison's
she's got
story.
interesting stories.
Yeah,
That's something
yeah.
cool part about it, because she was pretty. She would say it herself, like pretty typical Catholic. I think her faith was, kind of cultural thing, but Alpha's what really made a difference for her. I didn't know that. It's funny because it happened just about when we got here. So Allison's always been kind of around. I think she was part of the choir, and a good friend of hers, they sang in the 5 o'clock choir, and she was always very generous about being part in the last year and a half for the greeters at the door. So I just assumed she's always part of the parish, but I was fascinated when I did that interview with her.
It's good to
last
know.
week.
Yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah, it's a neat little story.
And I think it helps for others to understand, so I can relate now to where you're coming from. Because too often people are saying, well, yeah, but you don't need this. Look at you.
Yeah.
No.
And then again, Allison went from pretty lukewarm Catholic at best. I think I don't want to put words in her mouth, but to taking an Alpha, to working on an Alpha, to now with Juliana running the Alpha. Like that's exactly what I'm kind of talking about.
Yeah.
An entry level, a little bit of development, and now actively doing
Allison's a great example of, again, like
those
what this
3
gospel
stages.
is
Yeah,
about today,
exactly.
is like discovering and acknowledging who Jesus truly is and bringing Jesus to others.
Right on.
And like that's the beauty of all that. Grant us your blessing, please.
Lord, watch over, guide, and protect you. Saints and angels intercede for you, and our Blessed Mother wrap you in the mantle for peace. On this Football Sunday. Very excited.
Yes.
Yeah, very good. And the Lord continue to bless you, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Go in the peace of Christ.
Have a great week.